Hello and welcome to our daily Bible reading companion. This week we are in Acts chapter 26. So a couple of thoughts. There's lots of information here in Acts chapter 26. If you have not been keeping up, or maybe you have fallen behind a little bit in our Bible reading, I would make one suggestion to go back and read the last few chapters. This will help you to understand Acts chapter 26 a little bit better. You could actually go all the way probably back to Acts chapter 21 to get a little bit more understanding. I would also encourage you to take a listen to the videos that I made last week as we began talking about King Agrippa. That's important because what we find in Acts chapter 26, actually go back to chapter 25 and verse number 25. So you have Festus talking to King Agrippa. In verse 25 of chapter 25, it says, "But I had found that he had committed nothing worthy of death." He's talking about Paul. "And since he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to send him. Yet I have nothing definite about him to write to my lord. Therefore I have brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after the investigation has taken place, I may have something to write. For it seems absurd to me in sending a prisoner not to indicate also the charges against him." I think that says something about Paul and who he was and what he was doing. Other people could see the charges that the Jews had made against him and how there was really nothing there. And so we continue on in chapter 26, beginning in verse number 1. "Agrippa said to Paul, 'You are permitted to speak for yourself.'" So what you're going to read about this week, Paul is going to rehearse who he is, his history, his past to King Agrippa. At the end of the chapter, he's going to try to get King Agrippa to become a Christian as well. And so Agrippa allows him to speak. So Paul, it says, stretched out his hand and proceeded to make his defense. I want you just to notice in what he says in verses 2, 3, and 4. "In regard to all the things of which I am accused by the Jews, I consider myself fortunate, King Agrippa, that I am about to make my defense before you today, especially because you are an expert in all customs and questions among the Jews." So Paul wasn't trying to get on the king's good side. He was saying what was true. "Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently." And one thing we can say about King Agrippa is that he did listen to Paul patiently. "So then, all Jews know my manner of life from my youth up, which from the beginning was spent among my own nation and at Jerusalem, since they have known about me for a long time." So Paul wasn't someone new. People knew his past. People knew his faith in God, as he says in verse number 3 and verse number 4 and 5. He would go on to say, the last part of verse 5, "If they are willing to testify that I lived as a Pharisee, according to the strictest sect of our religion." So Paul's saying, look, everybody knows who I am, and they know about my past. And he's just laying this case out about himself, and now he's going to start talking about the hope of the promise of God, or made by God to the fathers. He said in verse 6, "And now I am standing trial for the hope of the promise made by God to our fathers." That language seems it's similar to Acts chapter 13, as Paul would begin talking about the promises God made back in the Old Testament and the fulfillment of those promises through the Messiah, Jesus Christ. So we're going to dive into Acts chapter 26. There's lots to talk about. Talk to you later. Take care, and God bless.